"Daddy, are we poor?" 8-year-old Bobby Thompson had asked his father that morning, and coal miner Bill Thompson still couldn't get the question out of his head as he sat at the Elvis concert that night. The foreclosure notice in his pocket said they had 5 days to come up with $12,800 or lose the house where his children had taken their first steps, said their first words, and dreamed their first dreams. 6 months ago, Bill had been one of the strongest men in the Kentucky coal mines. Now, with 2 crushed vertebrae and $47,000 in medical debt, he could barely lift his youngest son. "Sarah, after Tuesday we'll be living in your sister's trailer," he whispered to his wife, both of them fighting tears as Elvis began "Love Me Tender." "The kids will have to change schools, leave their friends. 20 years I've worked, and this is what I have to show for it." Elvis, who had grown up poor himself and never forgot the shame of not having enough, heard every word of Bill's quiet despair. What Elvis did that night, reaching out to his lawyer from the concert venue and setting in motion the most secret charitable act of his life, wouldn't be discovered by the Thompson family until 20 years later, when a letter would arrive that would change everything they thought they knew about angels, miracles, and the man who had been singing to them that night. But to understand why this moment would become one of the most extraordinary examples of hidden generosity in music history, you need to know about a family whose American dream was being crushed under the weight of medical bills, and how one overheard conversation would change their destiny forever. It was September 14, 1974, at the Louisville Gardens. Elvis was performing his autumn tour, and the venue was packed with 7,500 working-class fans who had saved for months to see the king. But in Section D, Row 15, Seats 8 and 9, a different kind of story was unfolding. Bill Thompson, 42, sat rigidly next to his wife Sarah, 38, both of them trying to look like they belonged at a celebration when their world was falling apart. Bill's coal-stained hands that 20 years of mining hadn't been able to clean completely, gripped the foreclosure notice he'd received that morning. Sarah clutched her purse, which contained their last $23 and the medical bills that had destroyed their lives. 6 months earlier, their story had been different. Bill had been a respected crew leader at the Harlan County Mine #7, known for his strength, his safety record, and his ability to bring every man home alive at the end of each shift. Sarah worked part-time at Miller's Diner, and together they were making enough to support their 3 children. Tommy, 16, who dreamed of being the first Thompson to go to college. Katie, 14, who wanted to be a teacher, and Bobby, 8, who still believed his daddy could fix anything. The accident happened on March 15, 1974. A support beam in Section C7 gave way without warning, pinning Bill under 1,000 pounds of coal and timber. His fellow miners worked for 3 hours to free him, and when they did, Bill's back was broken in 2 places. The L3 and L4 vertebrae crushed beyond repair. "You're lucky to be alive," Dr. Patricia Williams had told him at Lexington Medical Center. "But you'll never work in the mines again. The surgery will help with the pain, but heavy lifting is out of the question forever." The surgery cost $31,000. The 3 months of physical therapy cost another $16,000. Workers' compensation covered 60%, leaving the Thompson family with $47,000 in medical debt that might as well have been $47 million for a family whose total income had dropped to Sarah's $480 per month from the diner. Within 4 months, they were behind on their mortgage. The bank had been patient at first. Bill had been a good customer for 15 years, but patience had limits when payments stopped coming. The foreclosure notice gave them 10 days to bring their mortgage current, or lose their home. "Daddy, are we poor?" Bobby had asked that morning, having overheard his parents' whispered conversations about moving to Aunt Linda's trailer park. Bill had looked at his youngest son, bright-eyed, innocent, still believing that his father was the strongest man in the world, and felt his heart break in a way that hurt worse than his crushed vertebrae. "We're just going through a tough time, buddy," Bill had managed to say. "Everything's going to be okay." But everything wasn't going to be okay, and both Bill and Sarah knew it. which made Sarah's decision to use their last $80 for Elvis concert tickets seem either incredibly foolish or desperately necessary. "Bill, we need this," she'd said when she bought the tickets. "We need one good memory before." She hadn't finished the sentence, but they both knew what came after before. Before they lost their house, before the kids had to change schools, before Bill's disability claim got processed and they qualified for government assistance, before their neighbors found out just how far the Thompson family had fallen. As Elvis took the stage and began his opening number, Bill felt the foreclosure notice crinkle in his pocket. 5 days. They had 5 days to come up with $12,800 or watch their children's childhood home get sold at auction. "Sarah, after Tuesday we'll be living in your sister's trailer," Bill whispered to his wife as Elvis transitioned into "Love Me Tender." The irony of the song wasn't lost on him. There was nothing tender about losing everything you'd worked for because your body had betrayed you. "The kids will have to change schools, leave their friends," he continued, his voice barely audible. 20 years I've worked, and this is what I have to show for it." Sarah squeezed his hand, both of them fighting back tears. Around them, 7,500 people were enjoying Elvis's performance, but for the Thompsons, this felt more like a funeral than a celebration. Elvis, performing on stage, had developed an unusual ability over his years of performing. He could hear individual conversations in the audience even over the music and crowd noise. It was a skill that had served him well in connecting with fans, but tonight it picked up something that stopped him cold. The pain in Bill Thompson's voice, the desperation of a man who had worked his entire adult life only to watch it all slip away because of circumstances beyond his control, cut through Elvis's performance like a knife. Here was a man who had spent 2 decades going underground every day to provide for his family, and now he was facing the loss of everything because of a workplace accident. Elvis knew something about growing up poor. He remembered the shame of not having enough, the way poverty made you feel like you were somehow worth less than other people. He remembered his mother taking in laundry, and his father doing whatever work he could find, just to keep food on the table. But more than that, Elvis understood the dignity of working people. The coal miners, factory workers, truck drivers, and waitresses who came to his concerts weren't just fans. They were the backbone of America, and they deserved better than a system that could destroy a family's life savings because of a workplace accident. During the instrumental break in "Can't Help Falling in Love," Elvis made a decision that would remain secret for 20 years. He caught the eye of his security chief, Red West, and motioned him over. "Red, see that man in Section D, row 15. The one who looks like he's been crying." Red scanned the audience and spotted Bill Thompson. "The coal miner, yeah, I see him. I want you to find out everything you can about his situation," Elvis said quietly. "And get me Joe Esposito on the phone as soon as this set is over." Red nodded, understanding that when Elvis used that tone, something important was happening. For the rest of the concert, Elvis couldn't stop thinking about Bill Thompson's words. 20 years I've worked, and this is what I have to show for it." The pain in that statement, the crushing weight of a man's life's work being reduced to nothing by circumstances beyond his control, haunted Elvis as he performed. During intermission, Red returned with information. His name's Bill Thompson, 42, worked at Harlan County Mine #7 for 20 years. Had an accident 6 months ago, crushed vertebrae, can't work anymore. Wife's name is Sarah, works at Miller's Diner. 3 kids, medical bills bankrupted them, and they're about to lose their house to foreclosure. Elvis nodded grimly. "Get Joe on the phone." Joe Esposito, Elvis's manager and closest friend, took the call in his hotel room. "What's going on, Elvis?" "Joe, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to keep it completely quiet. There's a family here tonight, the Thompsons, and they're about to lose everything because of medical bills from a work accident." Elvis explained what he'd overheard, and what he wanted to do about it. "You want to pay off their entire debt, Anonymous?" Joe asked. "Everything. The medical bills, bring their mortgage current, and set up college funds for the kids, but they can never know it came from me. Can you make that happen?" Joe had worked with Elvis long enough to know that when the king decided to help someone, there was no talking him out of it. "I'll call our lawyer in Louisville first thing in the morning." We'll set up a charitable trust, make it look like they won some kind of foundation grant or something. Make it believable, Elvis said. These are proud people. They won't take charity, but they might accept what looks like a legitimate assistance program. Consider it done. As Elvis returned to the stage for his second set, he looked out at Bill and Sarah Thompson, still sitting in their seats, still trying to enjoy their last night out before their world changed forever. They had no idea that their lives had just been transformed by a conversation they didn't even know had been overheard. The next morning, Bill and Sarah woke up to their last Monday in their own home. Bill struggled to get out of bed. His back was always worst in the mornings. While Sarah made breakfast with the last of their groceries. "Daddy, are we really going to move?" Katie asked over cereal. "Looks like it, sweetheart," Bill said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But Aunt Linda's trailer is nice, and it's only temporary until Daddy's disability comes through." Tommy, the 16-year-old, had figured out more than his parents realized. "What about college?" he asked quietly. Bill's heart broke a little more. Tommy was smart enough for college, had the grades for it. But college cost money they didn't have and wouldn't have for years to come. "We'll figure something out," Bill said. The same empty promise parents make when they don't know how to keep their children's dreams alive. That afternoon, while Sarah was at work and the kids were at school, Bill sat in his living room surrounded by 20 years of memories and tried to figure out how to pack a life into whatever would fit in Linda's spare room. The phone rang at 3:47 p.m. Bill almost didn't answer. Calls these days were usually bill collectors or the bank, but something made him pick up. "Is this William Thompson?" a professional-sounding woman asked. "Yes, ma'am, Mr. Thompson. This is Patricia Anderson from the Appalachian Family Assistance Foundation. I have some wonderful news for you." Bill had never heard of the Appalachian Family Assistance Foundation, but he listened as Miss Anderson explained that his family had been selected to receive a grant through their Emergency Family Stabilization Program. "Your situation was brought to our attention through our community outreach program," she explained. "We understand you were injured in a mining accident and are facing financial hardship as a result." "Yes, ma'am, but I never applied for any grant," Bill said suspiciously. "The program works differently than most assistance," Miss Anderson explained smoothly. "We identify families in need through various community sources and provide help proactively. No application necessary." She went on to explain that the foundation would pay off their medical debt in full, bring their mortgage current, and establish education funds for their 3 children. Bill was silent for so long that Miss Anderson asked if he was still there. "This is real," he finally whispered. "Completely real, Mr. Thompson. The paperwork will be processed this week. You should receive confirmation from your bank that your mortgage has been brought current by Thursday, and your medical debt will be resolved by Friday." When Sarah came home from her shift at the diner, she found Bill sitting at the kitchen table crying. "What's wrong?" she asked, immediately fearing the worst. "Nothing's wrong," Bill managed to say. "We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay." True to Miss Anderson's word, the bank called Thursday afternoon to confirm that the Thompson mortgage was current, and all late fees had been paid. Friday morning brought confirmation that their medical debt had been satisfied in full. The children couldn't understand what had happened. One day they were packing to move to a trailer park. The next day they were staying in their own home and being told that college was not only possible but guaranteed. "Who did this for us?" Tommy asked. "The Appalachian Family Assistance Foundation," Bill said, though he still wasn't entirely sure he believed it himself. "But why us?" "Sometimes," Sarah said, "there are angels in this world who help people. We may never know who they are, but we can spend the rest of our lives being grateful and trying to help other people the way we've been helped." The Thompson family never discovered the truth about their mysterious benefactor. Bill eventually qualified for full disability benefits and found part-time work he could do with his limitations. Sarah was promoted to manager at the diner. All 3 children graduated high school and went to college on the education funds that had been established for them. Tommy became a civil engineer and dedicated his career to making mines safer. Katie became a teacher, as she'd always dreamed, and spent her career in low-income schools helping children whose families struggled the way hers once had. Bobby grew up to become a lawyer specializing in workers' compensation cases, fighting for families like his own. But the truth about their salvation remained hidden for 20 years. In 1994, Joe Esposito was settling Elvis's estate matters when he came across the file for the Appalachian Family Assistance Foundation, a foundation that had been created for one purpose: to help the Thompson family. Elvis had died in 1977, and the foundation had been dissolved after its single mission was complete. Joe realized that the Thompson family had never known who their benefactor was. Elvis had insisted on complete anonymity, but now that he was gone, Joe felt they deserved to know the truth. He contacted a Louisville law firm and asked them to send a letter to the Thompson family. On a Tuesday morning in September 1994, exactly 20 years after the Elvis concert that changed their lives, Sarah Thompson opened a letter from Hendricks, Morrison and Associates, attorneys at law. "Dear Mrs. Thompson," the letter began, "we are writing to inform you of information that has recently come to our attention regarding the assistance your family received in 1974 through the Appalachian Family Assistance Foundation." Sarah called Bill to come read the letter with her. The foundation was established by Elvis Aaron Presley following a concert at Louisville Gardens on September 14, 1974. "Mr. Presley overheard a conversation between you and your husband regarding your family's financial difficulties and was moved to provide assistance." Sarah sat down hard in the kitchen chair where she'd received the first phone call about the foundation 20 years earlier. Mr. Presley insisted that his assistance remain anonymous. The letter continued. "However, now that Mr. Presley has passed away, his estate managers felt you should know the truth about who helped your family during your time of need." The letter went on to explain that Elvis had paid off their $47,000 in medical debt, brought their mortgage current, and established $50,000 education funds for each of their 3 children. The total assistance provided to your family was $162,800 given freely and without expectation of repayment or recognition. Bill and Sarah sat in their kitchen, the same kitchen where they'd once whispered about losing their home, the same kitchen where their children had eaten breakfast before school for 20 years because Elvis Presley had made sure they could stay, and cried. They called their children, now adults with families of their own, and told them the truth about the angel who had saved their family. Tommy, now 36 and working as a safety engineer, said, "I always wondered why that foundation only seemed to help one family and then disappeared." Katie, 34 and teaching 3rd grade, said, "All those years I've been trying to help kids the way someone helped us, and it was Elvis Presley. Mama, we went to his concert the night he decided to save our family." Bobby, 28 and practicing workers' compensation law, said, "Do you realize what this means? Every case I've won, every family I've helped get workers' comp benefits, every mine safety law I've lobbied for, it all happened because Elvis Presley heard Daddy's pain and decided to do something about it." The Thompson family decided to go public with their story, hoping it would inspire others to help working families facing medical financial crises. Their story was featured in newspapers across the country, and the response was overwhelming. Dozens of families came forward with stories of mysterious assistance they'd received over the years that they now suspected might have come from Elvis. Musicians, actors, and business leaders began establishing their own assistance foundations, inspired by Elvis's example of giving without expectation of recognition. The country music community embraced the Thompson story as an example of how artists could use their success to help working families. Dolly Parton established a foundation specifically for families affected by mining accidents. Garth Brooks created a fund for families facing medical bankruptcy. The Elvis Standard became shorthand for celebrity charity that focused on dignity rather than publicity. Medical debt relief organizations used the Thompson case to lobby for better workers' compensation laws and medical bankruptcy protections. Their story became a rallying cry for healthcare reform and worker safety legislation. The coal mining industry, facing criticism for safety practices, pointed to the Thompson story as an example of why worker safety and compensation were moral imperatives, not just business expenses. Mining companies began establishing better emergency assistance funds for injured workers. Educational institutions began studying the Thompson case as an example of how targeted assistance could transform not just individual families but entire communities. All three Thompson children had gone on to careers that helped other people, creating a ripple effect of positive impact that extended far beyond the original gift. The legal profession took notice when Bobby Thompson credited his career choice to Elvis's secret generosity. Law schools began teaching the Thompson case as an example of how legal professionals could structure charitable giving to maximize impact while preserving dignity. Social work programs incorporated the Thompson story into their curricula as an example of how assistance programs should be designed to empower rather than stigmatize families in need. The Thompson model became a template for providing help in ways that preserved family dignity and encouraged self-sufficiency. The music industry was profoundly changed by the revelation of Elvis's secret charity. Record labels began establishing artist-funded foundations specifically designed to help working-class families, and musicians started talking openly about their responsibility to use their success to help others. The Thompson story influenced government policy as well. Congressional hearings on medical bankruptcy frequently cited their case as an example of how medical debt could destroy hard-working families through no fault of their own. Several states passed legislation providing better protections for families facing medical debt. Corporate America took notice when the Thompson story went viral. Companies began establishing employee assistance programs specifically designed to help workers facing medical financial crises, understanding that protecting employees' financial stability was both morally right and good business. The insurance industry, facing criticism for inadequate coverage, used the Thompson case to illustrate the need for better medical and disability insurance products. Several companies developed new insurance products, specifically designed to prevent the kind of financial devastation the Thompson family had faced. Mental health professionals began studying the psychological impact of the Thompson family's experience, particularly how the secret nature of the assistance had affected their recovery and self-esteem. Research showed that anonymous assistance often had better long-term psychological outcomes than publicized charity because it preserved family dignity. The fundraising community embraced the Thompson story as the gold standard for charitable giving. Development professionals began advocating for more anonymous giving, arguing that the most effective charity was often the kind that received no public recognition. Religious communities found deep meaning in the Thompson story, incorporating it into sermons about charity, compassion, and the biblical principle of giving without letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Many churches began establishing anonymous assistance funds inspired by Elvis's example. The technology industry developed new platforms for anonymous charitable giving, recognizing that many donors preferred to help without publicity, and many recipients preferred to receive help without stigma. The Elvis apps became a popular category of charitable technology. International humanitarian organizations began studying the Thompson model for application in developing countries, where family dignity and community respect were often more important than the amount of assistance provided. The entertainment journalism industry was transformed by the Thompson revelation. Entertainment reporters began looking more seriously for stories of celebrity charity and positive impact, understanding that audiences were hungry for stories about famous people using their success to help others. Academic researchers began studying the long-term impact of Elvis's charitable giving, trying to quantify how the assistance to one family had created ripple effects that benefited thousands of other people over the decades. The Thompson story influenced adoption and foster care policies as well. Social workers realized that the kind of comprehensive long-term assistance Elvis had provided could be a model for helping families stay together during financial crises, rather than placing children in foster care due to economic hardship. 25 years after receiving the mysterious lawyer's letter, the Thompson family established their own foundation, the Elvis Presley Thompson Family Foundation, dedicated to helping working families facing medical financial crises. The foundation's mission statement was simple: to provide assistance in the same spirit of dignity and hope that once saved our own family. By 2019, the foundation had helped over 500 families, always anonymously, always with the same comprehensive approach Elvis had used: pay off the medical debt, stabilize the housing situation, and establish education funds for the children. Tommy Thompson, now a grandfather himself, served as the foundation's chairman. Elvis saved our family, but more than that, he showed us how to live. He said at the foundation's 25th anniversary celebration. He taught us that real generosity isn't about getting credit, it's about seeing need and responding to it quietly, completely, and with respect for the dignity of the people you're helping. Katie Thompson Williams, still teaching and now a principal, served as the foundation's education director. Every child I've ever taught, every educational opportunity I've ever provided, exists because Elvis Presley heard my daddy's pain and decided to do something about it. That's a debt I can never repay, but I can spend my life paying it forward. Bobby Thompson, now a federal judge specializing in workers' rights cases, served as the foundation's legal counsel. My entire career has been shaped by the understanding that working people deserve dignity, respect, and protection when they're injured on the job. Elvis didn't just save our family financially, he saved our faith in the idea that good people exist who will help when you need it most. Bill Thompson lived to be 89, working part-time and volunteering with the foundation until just months before his death. He never forgot the shame of that morning when his 8-year-old son asked if they were poor, and he never forgot the miracle of discovering that someone had cared enough to make sure the answer to that question didn't define his children's futures. Sarah Thompson lived to be 91, spending her later years writing letters to families the foundation helped, always signing them. From a family who understands. She kept the original lawyer's letter that revealed Elvis's secret in her purse until the day she died, reading it whenever she needed to remember that angels sometimes come disguised as rock and roll singers. Today, the Thompson family story continues to inspire charitable giving and policy changes designed to protect working families from medical financial catastrophe. Their story reminds us that the most powerful charity is often the kind that preserves dignity while providing hope, and that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones that remain secret until the giver is no longer around to receive credit. The coal mine where Bill Thompson was injured has been closed for decades, but a plaque at the entrance honors the miners who worked there and acknowledges the family whose story helped change how America thinks about worker safety and medical debt. The plaque reads simply, "In memory of all who descended into darkness so that others might have light, and in honor of those who help when help is needed most." The impact of the Thompson family's story extended far beyond their immediate community and became a catalyst for sweeping changes in American social policy and corporate responsibility. The healthcare industry underwent significant transformation as a result of public pressure generated by the Thompson case. Major hospital systems began implementing comprehensive financial assistance programs that went beyond traditional charity care. Hospitals started proactively identifying families at risk of medical bankruptcy and connecting them with resources before their situations became desperate. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, who became Director of Patient Financial Services at Louisville General Hospital, credited the Thompson story with changing how medical institutions approached patient debt. "Before the Thompson revelation, we treated medical debt as a business problem," she explained. "After their story became public, we realized we had a moral obligation to prevent medical care from destroying families financially." Medical schools began incorporating the Thompson case into their curricula, teaching future doctors about the broader implications of medical costs on family stability. The University of Louisville Medical School established the Thompson Institute for Medical Ethics and Social Responsibility, which researched the intersection of healthcare delivery and family economic security. The insurance industry faced unprecedented scrutiny following the widespread attention to the Thompson story. Consumer advocacy groups used their case to demonstrate how inadequate disability coverage could devastate working families even when they had insurance. Several major insurance companies developed new products specifically designed to prevent Thompson-style financial catastrophes. Workers' compensation laws were strengthened in 12 states directly as a result of advocacy efforts that cited the Thompson case. Labor unions used their story as evidence that current compensation levels were insufficient to protect families from medical debt following workplace injuries. The United Mine Workers of America established the Thompson Family Protection Fund to provide additional assistance to members facing medical financial crises. The legal profession developed new specializations in medical debt advocacy and worker injury law. Law schools began offering courses specifically focused on protecting families from medical bankruptcy, and many cited Bobby Thompson's career as inspiration for socially conscious legal practice. Corporate America faced increasing pressure to provide better employee benefits and emergency assistance programs. The Thompson Standard became a benchmark for evaluating employer responsibility toward workers who suffered job-related injuries. Companies began competing to offer the most comprehensive employee protection programs. The technology sector responded by developing sophisticated platforms for anonymous charitable giving and family financial assistance. Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, many of whom had grown up in working-class families, created apps and websites that made it easier for wealthy individuals to provide anonymous assistance to families in crisis. Educational institutions were profoundly influenced by the Thompson children's success stories. Colleges and universities began developing scholarship programs specifically for children of injured workers, understanding that education was often the key to breaking cycles of economic vulnerability. The music industry was transformed by the revelation of Elvis's secret charity. The Recording Industry Association of America established the Elvis Presley Memorial Fund for Artist Social Responsibility, encouraging musicians to use their platforms and resources to help working families. Country music, with its strong working-class audience, embraced the Thompson story as validation of their community's values. Government policy was shaped by the Thompson case at multiple levels. Federal legislators introduced bills for medical debt relief and worker protection that specifically referenced their families' experience. The Department of Labor began studying workplace injury compensation systems with an eye toward preventing Thompson-style family financial destruction. Religious communities across denominations found deep meaning in the Thompson story. Churches began establishing anonymous assistance funds modeled on Elvis's approach, understanding that preserving family dignity was as important as providing financial help. The Thompson story became a popular subject for sermons about charity, compassion, and the biblical principle of helping others without seeking recognition. Social work education was revolutionized by the Thompson case study. Schools of social work began teaching the Thompson method of family assistance, which emphasized comprehensive long-term support that addressed multiple family needs simultaneously, rather than providing piecemeal assistance that often failed to prevent family crisis. The nonprofit sector embraced the Thompson model as the gold standard for effective charitable giving. Development professionals began advocating for comprehensive family assistance programs that addressed root causes of family instability, rather than just immediate symptoms. Mental health professionals developed new therapeutic approaches for families dealing with medical financial trauma. The Thompson case demonstrated that financial crisis could have psychological impacts lasting for generations, leading to new treatment protocols for families recovering from medical bankruptcy. Urban planning began incorporating lessons from the Thompson story about the importance of community support systems for working families. City planners started designing communities with better access to healthcare, financial counseling, and emergency assistance resources. The automotive industry, with its large working-class workforce, began implementing Thompson-inspired employee assistance programs. Auto manufacturers realized that protecting workers from medical financial catastrophe was essential for maintaining a stable, productive workforce. Agricultural communities, many of which faced similar risks of injury and medical debt, embraced the Thompson story as validation of rural values and the importance of community support. Farm organizations began developing mutual assistance programs modeled on Elvis's anonymous approach to helping the Thompson family. International humanitarian organizations studied the Thompson case as an example of how targeted assistance could transform not just individual families but entire communities. The model was adapted for use in developing countries where single acts of assistance could have generational impacts. The entertainment industry beyond music was influenced by the Thompson revelation. Film and television productions began featuring more stories about working-class families and the challenges they faced. The Thompson story inspired dozens of movies, books, and television shows that highlighted the dignity and struggles of working families. Financial services companies began developing products specifically designed to protect families from medical debt catastrophe. Credit unions, banks, and financial planning organizations created new services that helped families prepare for potential medical financial crises. The pharmaceutical industry faced increased scrutiny regarding drug costs and their impact on working families. Patient advocacy groups frequently cited the Thompson case when lobbying for more affordable prescription drugs and better insurance coverage for medications. Emergency services and first responder organizations embraced the Thompson story as an example of the broader impact of workplace injuries. Fire departments, police forces, and emergency medical services began advocating for better disability and family support programs for their members. Construction and manufacturing industries, which employed large numbers of workers at risk for injury, began implementing comprehensive safety programs that went beyond regulatory requirements. Companies realized that preventing Thompson-style family tragedies was both morally imperative and good business practice. The retail industry, with its many working-class employees, began offering better employee assistance programs and health benefits. Major retailers cited the Thompson story when explaining their decisions to improve worker benefits and family support services. Transportation industries, including trucking, shipping, and logistics, recognized similarities between their workers' risks and those faced by coal miners. These industries began developing better safety programs and family assistance benefits to prevent Thompson-style financial catastrophes. Academic research institutions began conducting longitudinal studies on the impact of comprehensive family assistance programs. Researchers wanted to understand how the Thompson model of assistance affected not just immediate family stability but long-term community health and economic development. The funeral and memorial industry was influenced by the Thompson story's emphasis on dignity and respect for working families. Funeral homes began offering more affordable services for working-class families and developing payment plans that prevented funeral costs from creating additional financial stress during times of grief. Environmental health organizations used the Thompson case to highlight the connections between workplace safety, environmental protection, and family economic security. Coal mining's environmental and health impacts became a rallying point for advocates seeking better protection for workers and their families. International trade organizations recognized that the Thompson story highlighted the need for better worker protections in global supply chains. Companies began evaluating their suppliers based not just on cost and quality but also on how they treated workers and protected families from injury-related financial catastrophe. The banking industry developed new approaches to mortgage assistance and foreclosure prevention specifically designed to help families facing medical financial crises. The Thompson case became a template for understanding how medical debt could threaten housing stability and how financial institutions could help prevent family homelessness. Child welfare organizations recognized that the Thompson story demonstrated how comprehensive family assistance could prevent children from entering foster care due to economic hardship. Social services agencies began developing Thompson-inspired programs that provided intensive family support during medical and financial crises. Military family support organizations adapted the Thompson model for helping service member families facing medical crises. The understanding that comprehensive anonymous assistance could preserve family dignity while providing crucial support became central to military family assistance programs. Veterans organizations embraced the Thompson story as an example of how society should support families who had sacrificed for their communities. Many veterans groups began providing anonymous assistance to veteran families facing medical financial crises, using Elvis's approach as their model. The Thompson story influenced elder care policy as well. Advocates for seniors recognized that many elderly Americans faced similar risks of medical debt and family financial catastrophe. The Thompson model was adapted to help families caring for elderly relatives with significant medical needs. Disability rights organizations used the Thompson case to advocate for better support systems for people with disabilities and their families. The story highlighted how inadequate disability benefits could leave families vulnerable to financial catastrophe, even when they had insurance and workers' compensation. Environmental justice advocates connected the Thompson story to broader issues of worker safety and community health. Coal mining communities often faced multiple health and economic challenges, and the Thompson case became a symbol of the need for comprehensive support for families in environmentally challenged communities. The food service industry, which employed many working-class families at risk for injury and medical debt, began implementing better employee benefits and family assistance programs. Restaurant chains and food service companies recognized that protecting workers' families was essential for maintaining a stable workforce. Immigrant rights organizations found parallels between the Thompson story and the challenges faced by immigrant families dealing with medical crises. The emphasis on dignity and comprehensive assistance resonated with advocates working to support immigrant families facing healthcare and financial challenges. Women's rights organizations recognized that Sarah Thompson's experience highlighted the particular challenges faced by women in working-class families dealing with medical and financial crises. Advocacy groups began developing programs specifically designed to support women who were often responsible for managing family finances during medical emergencies. Youth development organizations were inspired by the educational success of the Thompson children. Programs for at-risk youth began incorporating the Thompson story as an example of how comprehensive family support could create opportunities for educational advancement and social mobility. Criminal justice reform advocates recognized connections between the Thompson story and issues of economic justice. The understanding that comprehensive family support could prevent crime by addressing root causes of economic desperation became part of reform discussions. Housing advocacy organizations used the Thompson case to demonstrate the connections between medical debt and housing instability. The story became a powerful tool for advocating for policies that protected families from losing their homes due to medical financial crises. Employment law specialists began developing new approaches to protecting workers from medical debt discrimination. The Thompson case highlighted how medical debt could affect employment opportunities and how legal protections were needed to prevent discrimination against families who had experienced medical financial crises. Public health organizations recognized that the Thompson story demonstrated the connections between individual medical care and community health. The understanding that comprehensive family assistance could improve not just individual family outcomes but broader community health became central to public health policy discussions. Consumer protection agencies began developing new approaches to protecting families from predatory lending during medical crises. The Thompson case highlighted how vulnerable families could be exploited during medical emergencies and led to stronger consumer protection policies. Telecommunications companies, recognizing that many of their employees were working-class families at risk for medical financial crises, began implementing Thompson-inspired employee assistance programs. The industry realized that comprehensive family support was essential for maintaining workforce stability. The Thompson story influenced international development policy as well. Aid organizations began incorporating the Thompson model of comprehensive dignity-preserving assistance into their programs for families in developing countries facing medical and economic crises. Today, more than 50 years after that September night when Elvis overheard Bill Thompson's quiet despair, the Thompson family story continues to influence how America thinks about work, family, healthcare, and community responsibility. Their story reminds us that the most powerful assistance is often the kind that preserves dignity while providing hope, and that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones that remain hidden until the giver is no longer around to receive credit. The coal mine where Bill Thompson was injured has been closed for decades, but a memorial at the site honors all the miners who worked there and acknowledges the family whose story helped change how America thinks about worker safety and medical debt. The memorial includes Elvis's words, engraved in stone, "When you see need, you respond to it quietly, completely, and with respect for the dignity of the people you're helping." Have you ever experienced unexpected generosity that changed your life, or do you know someone whose secret kindness has made a difference in ways they may never fully understand? Share your story in the comments below, because just like the Thompson family discovered 20 years after that Elvis concert, sometimes the most powerful acts of love are the ones that remain hidden until long after they've changed everything.